those pom-poms. All right. You are fired up, and I am fired up to introduce you to our next speaker, Ruby Brown Herring. Ruby is the CEO of RBH Wellness Solutions, where she assists nonprofits, businesses, and government agencies with creating employee well-being strategies, the ones that support mental health at work while improving belonging, after my own heart, engagement, and retention. Ruby has over 20 years of experience in program management and adult learning. She is recognized around the state and around the nation as a leader in corporate wellness and community mental health education. She's a collaborative leader. She's always looking to connect with organizations that need subject matter experts and expertise on wellness. She wants to be that person to help step in and build the foundation of a better, healthier workforce. Please welcome Ruby Brown Herring. Come on up, Ruby.
Good morning, ANNC. I'm so glad that you're hyped up, and I'm here to continue the conversation about who is your person. So I'm going to invite you to take a journey with me. The Substance Abuse Services Administration, or SAMHSA, have identified these 8 dimensions of wellness as the things that work together to keep us well. I am going to specifically today to talk about the connection between emotional, social, and occupational. When we look in the workplace, social well-being involves how a person feels connected to their colleagues, feels connected to the alignment of the organization, and feels valued as a person. So I invite you to reflect and think about who is your person. Now, we all have besties. We all have our circles, but I want to introduce 3 bestie groups that I think you may all identify with. How many Sesame Street fans do we have? All right, Bert had Ernie, right? We have any Lion King fans? Absolutely. Timon had Pumbaa, right? And where are my original Grey's Anatomy fans? Christina had Meredith, right? And so, have you ever found yourself struggling to identify your person? And so, as we continue through this journey this morning, I invite you to ask yourself again, who is your person? Why is this important in the workplace? Earlier this year, the Surgeon General released a report that said, coming out of this pandemic, we now have an epidemic of loneliness and isolation. And he specifically talked about how it impacted us in the workplace. What is social connection? It's those relationships, those interactions that we have with people, whether they're our family members, our friends, or our coworkers, but those folks that help us develop that sense of belonging and connection. And so again, I ask you, who is your person? And so, Ruby, it's great. We know that we have all of the Berts and Ernies. We have the Christina and Merediths. We know who those folks are that we're connecting with. Why do I need to matter? And think about it in the workplace. This is why it matters. Businesses want the bottom line to be successful, right? They want our folks to be engaged. And so by increasing that connection in the workplace, we're increasing that engagement, that productivity. We're bringing people together to think outside of their boxes. And while we're doing that, we're building that sense of community that will only lift up the goals of the organization. But you know the other side of that, while we're lifting up the organization, we're also lifting up the people in our workplaces because we're reducing the stress that they're feeling and we're reducing the likelihood that they're going to develop mental health challenges such as depression and anxiety. And so again, I ask you to think about who is your person. Okay, so now we've talked about it, why it matters. How do we do this? What does this look like in my organization, whether it's a professional organization or whether it's my workplace? Stick with me on this journey. So I'm going to give you some strategies. Real quick, 4 tips that you can think about for how you can implement fostering connection in your organizations. Communication. How many folks in your workplace think that communication is really good? All right, let me see you raise a hand. I see a couple hands. They were kind of slow. That's fine. How many of you, again, you don't have to raise your hands for this, but how many of you recognize that communication is open from the manager to their teams that they lead? Right? The other place that I invite you to think about, what is the communication between the teammates Is that communication open? And most folks will say, yeah, we can check number one, we can check number two. But here's the challenge that I found in most clients that I work with. The third piece in terms of open communication is that folks are not communicating across teams and sales lines or service lines. And so again, when we talk about fostering communication, fostering connection, it's important that we open that communication along all those three areas. And when we're doing that, we're continuing to encourage that teamwork, we're bringing people together, and we are building healthy relationships so we can be like the people on this slide. I want them to be my workplace besties. I want somebody to push me around in a chair as long as you don't knock me off, right? And so building those healthy relationships. So if you cannot find ways to do that externally, a lot of organizations now have community involvement programs. Look for ways and suggest to your employees to get connected to the community because it allows them not only to have their own sense of purpose and belonging, it connects the values of the organization back to the community. Find ways that folks can get involved with each other. So I hope that the tips that I have shared with you this morning have been helpful and have started to prompt you to think about the importance of social connection in the workplace and how you can increase that. And so in the spirit of what all of us should be in terms of always being in that growth mindset, I'm going to invite you to, and I'm going backwards. How about that? I'm going to invite you to stick with me through this conversation and then some feedback. Oftentimes when we feel emotions, and here we've got a negative forward-facing emotion, replace anger with anything, we're like, ooh, I don't like that. Makes me feel bad. People are gonna start judging me. And we push it down and try to avoid it. If we see it in our teammates, we're like, what's Ruby mad about? She's not trying to be a team player. I'm not dealing with her today. Don't put me on her project. And so what I invite you to do is when you see that negative forward-facing behavior in others or feel it in yourself, pause. Don't react, but pause and think about what's driving it. Right? What's driving it? And then in that spirit of connection, reach out to that person. Our emotions individually tell us we need to reach out to somebody else, or we might even need to change our own mindset. And so I invite you again to think about who is your person and how does it impact you in the workplace. And so if you will, I'd love to get some feedback about the information that I shared with you. Take out those cell phones. You haven't had them out long. Take them out. Scan that QR code, and I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn, but please provide feedback for me because I always am in that growth mindset. And I'm going to give you a couple seconds to do that, and then I'm going to come back with my closing words. I love to see the phones out. I love to see the phones out. All right. So as you're filling in that feedback form, I invite you again today and after today to think about the question that we started with. Who is your person? I hope that each of you have identified folks that lift you up, that pour into you, and help you find your sense of belonging so that you can be more engaged and more productive in your workplace. Thank you so very much for your time.